it's Stephanie, and I wanted to do my November wrap-up and talk to you guys about all the books I read in November. As you know, it was nonfiction November, and I am happy to say I read 3.5 nonfiction books. You'll see the half, because the book was like half memoirs, half short stories. So the way I usually do this is I talk about the books I liked least, and I work my way up to the books I liked best. So starting with my least favorite book of the month, this month that was Black Hole by Charles Burns. This was a horror graphic novel. The reason I picked it up was because the premise made it sound a lot like the movie It Follows, which I really enjoyed. So this takes place in 1970s suburban Seattle. There is a disease that is going around and affecting the teens at this high school. This disease is sexually transmitted, and it manifests itself in very different ways with different people. Some people show like a wound. Some people have other things they can conceal. With that, I wasn't sure what the disease was supposed to be a metaphor for. I didn't know if it was supposed to be about AIDS because of the era, or if it's just a large metaphor for adolescence. I just was really confused, and it had really good illustrations, but they were in black and white. So in real life, I have a really hard time with facial recognition. The way the art was done here, I could not tell characters apart. I had to wait until someone addressed them by their name to figure out who we were talking about, because the girls all looked the same to me. I could not tell them apart. So that the rules with the disease were really vague, and I wasn't really even sure what was going on because it was just a little too sci-fi-esque for me. You guys know I don't do well when things get too sci-fi-esque and there's no rules and we start dealing with just like crazy stuff. It's just, I don't. So this unfortunately was just not my thing. The next book I read/listened to was Holidays on Ice by David Sedaris, because it's getting to be that time of year, and I feel like when people ask for holiday book recommendations, this is always one that comes up. And so this is my half nonfiction, because half of him is David Sedaris' essays from growing up. So a few of them I had heard in other books that he's written, and the other half were short stories. The one I liked the most was the Christmas letter one. I thought that one was really funny. The rest of them I just wasn't a huge fan of. But it was funny. It was like chuckle to yourself funny, not laugh out loud funny. And while I enjoyed it, this isn't making my way on my like David Sedaris favorites. And it was definitely a good read for this time of year. So the next book I read was Reading People by Bogel, How Seeing People Through the Lens of Personality Changes Everything. I think that's the title. So Anne Bogel is the blogger at Modern Mrs. Darcy. She also hosts the podcast What Should I Read Next? So this covered all types of personality types. This got into Enneagram and Myers-Briggs and, you know, introversion versus extroversion and all the truths behind that and how different we all are and how all of that contributes to how we operate. I think the only issue I had with this was just it was too vague, and it was just an explanation of what these tests were. I don't know, I really didn't feel like it really helped me understand other people. It just kind of told me about these personality types and made me aware of these things. I don't know. I wanted a little more depth to it. I wanted to get a little more specific. It was just way too much of an overview for me. The next book I read was Songs for the Missing by Stewart Onan. I read Last Night at the Lobster by Stewart Onan and absolutely loved it. This is a story about an 18-year-old girl that goes missing a few weeks before she's supposed to head out to college, and we are seeing the direct aftermath of this. This is told from the perspective of her father, of her mother, of her sister, her boyfriend, and her best friend. I do have a weird soft spot for books like this, books about grieving families, especially in cases like this where there is no closure. She's just missing, and they don't know what to think, and they don't know if they should grieve or if they should hold out hope, and it's all of these inner turmoils. And we do get to see different character perspectives, but unfortunately, I felt like they all were the same. They all were very detached, and I wanted a little more emotion from this. Everyone just seemed really cool about it. I mean, they were sad, don't get me wrong, but there was a distance that I couldn't relate to and I didn't find realistic, and a similarity between all the voices. And I enjoyed it, but I wanted more. The next book I read was Dear Fahrenheit 451 by Annie Spence, and this was delightful. Annie Spence is a librarian in Michigan, and she is writing love letters to books that she loves, obviously, and that have shaped her or impacted something in her life. And she's also writing letters to books that she has to get rid of at the library and letting them know why they're obsolete and maybe giving them a pat on the back or saying good riddance. And this was really funny. I listened to it on audio, which is a really good choice because she just has this like adorkable personality that comes through when it's read aloud. We do have a lot of similarities. She's a really big Jeffrey Eugenides fan, which I was like, yay! So this is just obviously her personal relationship with these stories. There's nothing here. She doesn't have too many unpopular opinions about anything. It's just one of those fun books to read. If you like books, I like hearing about how reading affects people. Obviously, that's why I'm on BookTube. I love watching people's BookTube channels because I love hearing how books can change someone and the effect they can have on people. So if that's also something you're interested in, this is just a real fun, delightful read. So the next book I listened to was Where Am I Now by Mara Wilson. If you don't know, Mara Wilson was the child actress that played Matilda. She was on Mrs. Doubtfire and Miracle on 34th Street. And if you don't follow Mara Wilson on Twitter, she is absolutely hilarious. So in her book, she talked about what it was like to be a child star and to have your adolescence, you know, happen in the public eye, and how she still feels tied to the Matilda character. So I was listening to this at work, and I did tear up in the chapters where she was talking about the death of her mother while they were finishing up Matilda, because that was the role like her mother really wanted her to play, and she never really got to see a full cut of it. There was chapters in there I thought that were unnecessary. She spends a whole chapter talking about how she did show choir in high school and talking about drama that she had with other girls in high school, and I didn't find it necessary, and it was a little uninteresting, but I think it did give me a lot to think about with child actors. And Mara Wilson did speak out about people sexualizing Millie Bobby Brown from Stranger Things, because, you know, that is something that she has experience in and has strong feelings about. So if that's something you're interested in, if you loved Matilda, if you think Mara Wilson is funny on Twitter, I would definitely suggest picking this up. So the next book I listened to was Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. I absolutely loved Everything I Never Told You, her debut novel, and so I was really excited to get to this. So Little Fires Everywhere takes place in this progressive suburb of Cleveland called Shaker Heights, and everything here is very meticulously planned. There's a lot of effort put into this, and they do pride themselves on, like I said, being very socially progressive. And so we're following Elena Richardson and her, you know, kind of perfect cookie cutter family that lives in these perfect suburbs, and they rent out one of their properties to a free-spirited artist, Mia Warren, and her daughter Pearl. And it's about the effect that Mia and her daughter have on her family. And also in the background, there is a custody battle when one of Elena's friends is trying to adopt a Chinese baby, and the mother is fighting for the custody of that Chinese baby. So there was a lot going on in this book, and that was honestly my biggest problem with it, was that there was just too many stories happening. Like, there was Elena's family and all 5 characters within that family. Then we also had Mia and Pearl and all the stuff that they're going through and their mysterious past. And then we have this custody battle on top of that. And that to me was just too many things to focus on. Everything I Never Told You, the main action is the family, is just the main players. There was a neighbor kid and his mom, and they may have had some influence. They didn't have major plot points. And I think I just didn't enjoy this book as much. I really, really wanted to, but I felt like it was stretched too thin. I never really got to care about any single person as much as I had wanted to. So this did touch on a lot of things with the adoption storyline, focusing on this progressive suburb of people that at one point, you know, say that they're above racism, that they're colorblind, and this was in the 90s. And just really pointing out the inconsistencies and problematic behaviors within people that think that way. I mean, she is a great writer. I'm definitely going to check out the next book she puts out, but I just wanted more out of this. I really feel like that could just sum up my whole reading experience the past couple months, is I wanted more until getting to my favorite book of the month after being disappointed with book after book after book. Guys, I finally found something that made me happy, that fulfilled me, and satisfied my soul. And that was the 4th book in the Dublin Murder Squad series by Tana French, Broken Harbor. I listened to this on audiobook, and I was so excited. So this takes place obviously in Ireland after the recession, in this suburb that was planned out. It was kind of put in the middle of nowhere, not in a great location. But unfortunately, the recession hit, so a lot of the houses in this suburb are empty. There's very few people that live there. But in one of these houses, there is a family, and they are all found murdered, a husband and wife, and 2 small children. Kennedy is assigned this case. He has the highest solve rate on the squad, and he's in charge of training the rookies, so he's given a rookie partner for this case, Richie. You know, they're obviously assigned this case, and they have to try to figure out what happened to this family. It's a murder mystery, you know, detective crime novel. But it was so great. Tana French just has this way of exploring these characters and really making me feel like I know them, and exploring topics without exploring them. Just having these big issues in the periphery without them being the main focus of the story, but still talking about them. In this book, I felt like there was a lot of talk about class and money and perception and the importance of all those things, and it was just so good because we do get to deal with the inner turmoil of the characters. Her endings are messy and complicated, and there's so much moral ambiguity, and I just, guys, I could fangirl over this. I just absolutely love her. This was a 5-star book for me. It gave me everything I wanted in a book, and thought I was going crazy. I'm like, why is nothing good? Why can't I find something that, like, understands me or gives me what I want out of this? So I was so happy to find Broken Harbor and break that spell. Anyway, have you guys felt that way too? I feel like with Mercy did those books, and like Steve Donahue and everyone has kind of made those response videos of feeling unsatisfied in your reading. Do you guys feel that way as well? What is a 5-star book that you have read recently? Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye!